Welcome to another tutorial. This is project 4 that I'm going to do. It's the museum CSS layout. If you look on page 154, it defines some of the things that you're going to learn. Number one is creating and linking an external CSS file, which is really very easy. Understanding the CSS box model, creating a layout with HTML elements, working with templates to improve workflow. We talked about that. Your project is going to consist of a template that all your pages will be defined from. You're going to edit CS rules. You're going to define HTML tag selectors, ID selectors, and compound selectors. Sounds like a lot of stuff to learn, but it's really not that challenging, and I'll try to take it as slow as I can. So I'm going to go to the very first page over here where actually we work, and it explains some of the things about a cascading style sheet. That's on page 157. You can see how you can define the characteristics of the paragraph, which is the P tag, and it tells us we want the font size to be 14, which means everything inside a P tag, unless otherwise defined by overriding the rule, is going to be 14 point. Then you have an H1 tag, which is going to be 24 point, and so on. The external style sheet is a sheet that your website will link to that's going to have all of these rules. You can actually have one inside of your own design in the internal document. However, it will only affect items in that document. More on that later. Okay, well, we already did the site files. We uploaded the zip file, we extracted it, and created a site. So I'm going to start with creating a new file, which is number 4 on page 158. So there's many ways to do it. So I'll just create file and new. And we want an HTML5 document. Click on create. And we have a file that absolutely has nothing in it. That's why it's a blank file. So it tells us to save the file as design. So I'm going to click on File, Save As. And we're in the museum. So we'll just call it Design. That takes care of that. Then it wants us to make sure design is open, and we want to look at the CSS Designer panel. CSS Designer panel is here in mine. If you don't have it open, just go to Window, and you'll see CSS Designer panel is right here. So I have it docked, and it's very easy to open. There it is. So I have it right here. Now it tells us in number 7 on page 159 that we are going to click on the sources section of the panel, and we're going to add the file. So I'm going to click on the plus. Here's the sources right here. And make sure you have all checked on that. We'll talk more about that later. Click on the plus sign. We're going to create a new CSS file. Tells us in number 8, to resulting dialog box, type museum and styles. M-U-S-E-U-M, styles. And you're always going to use link. I will explain when the time is right the difference between the two, but link is the preferred method to do that. It tells you in number 9 to use link. Doesn't really explain it, but it does. Then we're going to click on OK, and we have a new file. So what it did here, it tells us to link, therefore the link, and it gives us the name of the style sheets and there. Now the book tells you that it automatically gets put in the root directory. It should be in a folder called CSS. But because the book is not telling us to do it, I'm going to leave it that way. So we have the split window open, and it gives you an option to see what's going on, and then we're going to save everything. So far, we have a style sheet that really has nothing in it. If you look at the style sheet, it's absolutely nothing. That's page 159. Now on page 160, we're actually going to create some rules called selectors and elements. So it tells us to turn live view off. So let's go into design view. And we're going to go into the insert panel. And we're going to create a header. So I'm going to go strictly in design. I'm going to click on insert. And I'm going to click on, now don't choose heading. We want header. And it says, where do you want it? Obviously, we want it at the insertion point. So that is number 3. Then we're going to click on a new CSS rule button. So this is right here. Okay, it's going to tell us to choose tag for the selector type. So you have class, which we'll talk about, ID, tag, and compound. Class is something, it begins with a period. It allows you to apply a specific set of rules inside a class to any type of element that we want. But right now we want to reapply it to a tag. And then the name of the tag that it wants us to do it is header. So I'll click here and I'll start typing header. And we will have to find it the old-fashioned way, which is right there. That was number 5, is in the rule definition menu at the bottom, choose menu style. So I'm going to click on OK here. And we want menu style as where it's going to actually be defined. And then we're going to click on OK. And it brings up something different than what you're used to. This will only happen when you create a new style sheet from within an insert of a tag. So what we want to do here is we want to change the background to white. Now notice in number 7, it tells us to type FFF. So we're going to go to the background, and the background color is here. So what I'm going to do, since it tells us to type FFF, I'm just going to type FFF. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you use capital letters or lowercase letters in hexadecimal. However, I just think it looks nicer when everything's capitalized. However, that's up to you what you want to do. I could have just as easily selected the background color. Now, you may have heard me say that hexadecimal colors are 6 sets of either numbers or letters. Hexadecimal is from 0 to F, meaning 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 9. 10 is A, 11 is B, then C, D, and 15 would be F for the set of 16. So A, B, C, D, E, and F are all part of hexadecimal. So because all of the white is FFF, FFF, shorthand allows you to just type in FFF. It's exactly the same. Then in the box category, it wants us to put in a width of 930. So here's the box. And we're going to put a width of 930. And make sure it's PX and not percent or anything else. In a padding error, it wants us to make sure the all options are checked, and we're going to type in 10. So here's padding. We have same for all. Now, as soon as I type in 10, everything gets filled in. In the margin area, we're going to do on the top and bottom is 0. And then left and right is going to be auto. So we do not want the same for all. So I'll undo that. Then the top is going to be 10. The bottom is going to be 10. And then we're going to choose auto for the others. If you chose same for all by accident and filled it all in with 10, that's okay. You can go back and change them. Just make sure you uncheck the same for all in there. The auto left and right in margins allows the tag to be centered, which you'll see. So we're going to click OK in the insert header, and boom. And at the insertion point, boom. Now notice that it's centered. The reason why it's smaller is because we set a width. The reason why there's a little gap over here is because we did the padding. So let's look at what it did. It created the background color of white. The margin is 10. That's the top up here. Not in here. It's the top up here. The padding is this between this little black area and this little white dotted line here, and the width is 930. So if I were to make this bigger, then obviously it will make it bigger over here. Okay, that takes care of all the way up to just double checking. And you can look at what I just talked about in number 15, explains about the margins, the element, the padding, and the content area. So in the related file box, we're going to click that to show the file in the code pane, which we just did over there. Now, it's going to be a little bit different. So let me go back into this and over here. Notice that the margin has 10 and then auto. That's a shortcut. If shortcuts were not turned on in preferences, it would have margin top 10, margin bottom 10, margin left auto, and margin right auto. And you can see that in number 16. So we're going to drag and drop new elements. And you may like this, you may not like it. I'm kind of half and half on it. But it does have some advantages over here. So we have the design view open. We're going to click on live view. This is number 17. And we're going to click the footer button in the HTML insert panel, and we're going to drag it. So we have insert, and we need to find footer, which is right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to just drag it over here till you get a little green line. We want to put it underneath the header. So wait for you get the little green. Takes a little bit of patience. And there it is. Now notice the green line is underneath the header. Let it go, and boom. So we now have a footer that's wider than the header. Remember, we have set a rule for the header to make the width smaller. This right here is going to go all the way. So that takes care of that. If you made a mistake, you can always go into source code and you can move it around. I'll show you how to do that in a later video, but it's really very easy. It just involves selecting something and dragging it or cutting and pasting, depending upon what you like. That takes care of that. That was number 3 on page 163 over here. Then it shows you on the top the code view. Now we're back in the CSS Designer panel, and it tells us again that we want to be in all mode. So that's all. Current would just show the actual element that you have selected. All obviously shows you everything in here. So what we want to do is we want to do a selector that's going to apply to the footer. So one thing you always want to do is have it selected, and it will actually fill in the information for you based upon what you have selected. So let's click on New Selector. And notice it says body and footer. And the reason why it says body and footer is because it's going down from here and body and footer. You don't have to have body and footer. Footer is just fine by itself because everything is within the body. So an easy way to do it, instead of going in and clicking and physically deleting the body, you could actually hit your up arrow, and that removes the body. And if you go, oh, I meant to put it back in here, your down arrow will do the same thing. So now we have footer in there. We remove the body in there. And we're going to now hit the enter key. And then what we want to do on page 165, number 9, it wants us to put the width at 100. So we just find width. And this time we need to do 100%. and put the 100 here. And if you make a mistake, you can change it. If you put pixels by accident, you could just change it by clicking on the percent or clicking on the pixels, whatever you did, and change it in there. Or if you put in 1,000 or whatever, you can just click here and change the width. So very easy to fix a mistake. Or you could very easily go right in here if you choose and just change it to whatever you want. So again, we talked about so many times that you can do the same thing several different ways. So let's go back to live over here. We've done 100%. We've done define top and bottom margins of 10%. So we're going to find our margins over here. And because it's only telling us to do top and bottom, we don't want it linked. So we can tell if it's linked if it's dark. If it's not dark, boom. And boom. So just play with that and enjoy yourself. All right, so let's put it in here. And we want the top to be 10. Now notice it's still showing that. So that's not a problem. So we want the top and 10. Now I wanted to do this to show you that you can change this in code view, or you can change it however we want. So now we have the top and bottom set. So we could delete this right here with this arrow. So let's remove this property here. And let's go into menu styles. And you can see we have it here. Or you could delete the margin right from here if you chose to. And once we go back into here, you'll notice that it's gone. So again, more than one way to do that. Then we just finished number 10. We want to do the text properties, and we want to text align so everything we type is going to be centered. So the T is for text, and here's our text align and center. That means anytime we type something, you notice that to create content, new footer here goes right here, is centered, and we're going to save everything. That takes care of that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, since this video is getting a little bit longer, I'm going to stop it on page 166 and just go on from 166. So I will post this and hope you have a wonderful day. Please remember, you have questions, send me an email and I will respond to you as quickly as I can.